Ford wants America to fall back in love with small cars. This is the same company that not very long ago has killed off things like the Fiesta, the Focus, and to an extent even its saloons. In America, pretty much the only thing you can get now is the SUVs and the trucks. Kind of applies here too. So what's going on? It's like everything else in the car industry right now. It's completely in flux. It's in turmoil. It's in confusion. It barely knows what to do with itself. But what does this specifically imply? What is this talking about? Let's get into all of that.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
Right, so this news is from CNBC Autos section. And it says that Ford Motor Company expects to introduce a $30,000 all-electric vehicle that will be profitable in roughly 2.5 years. 2.5 years. Right. I mean, yes, this story is from now. 2.5 years, well, we're halfway into 2024. So you're talking at the end of 2026, maybe. Probably early 2027. And they're talking about a sub $30,000 car. I mean, you know, we already have sub £30,000, which is a bit more actually, sub £30,000 EVs on sale here right now. Most of them are coming from China. So, like most of the companies in America and indeed in Europe, and let's just say legacy car manufacturers, it seems to be in flux and seems to be confused about what to do about the future. And this statement struck me as really quite odd. This actually came from the Ford CEO, Jim Farley, and he said this during an Aspen Ideas Festival. Farley did not release many other details about the vehicle, which is being developed by Ford's Skunk Works team. Why is it being developed by the Skunk Works? Skunk Works normally implies, like the Skunk Works, normally they'll develop something like an off-roader or a supercar generally, something that's off the books, you know, and they're working on it until they're ready to show management. They say, hey, we could build this. Famously, things like the Jaguar XJ220, you know. But Skunk Works team is doing this. And it's expected to rival, as they say, Chinese car makers. Now, if you see my previous video that I did on this subject, there have, of course, been trade tariffs introduced massively in America. It's 100% trade tariff on Chinese cars. And even in Europe, it pretty much amounts to 50%. It's only recently that the news actually, because this is the thing, you need to stay tuned to my channel because I tell you stuff that doesn't get picked up until like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month or two later in the main news. So only like the other day they were talking about the fact that China is introducing these tariffs, and I told you guys like weeks ago in my video. Sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps. Well. Farley said Ford is first focusing on smaller EVs instead of larger all-electric trucks and SUVs. That's odd. Didn't they just introduce the Ford F-150 Lightning? However, they have pulled back on that a little bit. They have slowed it down a little bit. The production and introduction, I mean. Instead of larger all-electric trucks and SUVs, because these have historically been gas-powered. And they're never going to make money. And this is the thing. It's like a lot of people talk about EVs, about manufacturers. They're trying to push them, and they're in cahoots with the governments because they're trying to make money on them. And I keep telling people, like, manufacturers cannot make money on EVs. They don't like them. They have a 130-year legacy of producing internal combustion engine. They have got massive investments to make that switch to EV, which are fundamentally different drivetrains. And batteries are very, very expensive. In fact, we will touch on that because this is what he says. You have to, this is continuing with the Farley quote, you have to make a radical change to get a profitable EV. The first thing we have to do is really put all of our capital towards smaller, more affordable EVs. This is kind of slightly contradictory to what some of the industry has been saying, in that because of the cost of the battery packs, because it's so expensive to work and develop EVs, because the profit margins generally tend to be quite a lot smaller on smaller cars, whereas they're a bit more, you get a bit more profit on bigger, sportier, executive and larger cars. This is why smaller cars, as you've been seeing, have been taken off sale, because the investment required to keep them going is more than the meager profit margins that you actually get on them. The whole point of small cars is to make them affordable. So in order to make them affordable, you make them as cheap as possible. I don't mean that you make them as cheap as possible. You try to price them as cheap as possible. But you still have, as a legacy car manufacturer with a reputation, you still have to invest properly in creating a proper car. So that still costs a lot of money. That's why those cars are less profitable. And for manufacturers that are struggling, they're like, well, let's kill this off. Let's focus on the executive cars, the luxury cars, the big cars, the sports cars, where we tend to make more money. But this is going contra to all of that, because he's saying, no, we need to make smaller cars, smaller, more affordable EVs, which actually he's right, to be honest, from the consumer's point of view, because this is what consumers have been crying out for. Because even the people that want to switch to EVs, they're like, sure, we don't mind giving that a try, but they're too expensive. Brand new, at least they are. Used, that's where your bargains are. Continuing what he says. That's the duty cycle that we've now found that really matches. These big, huge, enormous EVs, they're never going to make money. The battery is $50,000. The batteries will never be affordable. Now, what he's talking about there, actually, is you're probably thinking the big SUVs that we see here, that are EVs, but actually, this is America we're talking about. And when he says big, he's not even referring to the F-150 truck. He's going bigger than that. He's talking about the Super Duties, the F-350s or whatever they are, the massive, massive ones, you know. And he says in order to get a battery that would give those a significant range of, say, 500 miles, that's a $50,000 battery. And of course, it'd be very heavy as well. So that's why he's saying it's not actually viable. So again, this is somebody from the car industry saying that electric vehicles, for example, in the freight industry or transport industry or commercial industry, are much more difficult to make feasible. And this is coming from the top. Ford earlier this year said it was postponing production of a large 3-row SUV at a plant in Canada to 2027 from its initial plan of 2025. It also postponed next generation codenamed T3 pickup truck from late 2025 to 2026. Lots going on. Farley on Friday reiterated Ford's next generation vehicles would be profitable. They've got to make money. Ford have been losing quite a lot of money in Europe as well, so they've got to make money. This is obviously an American story, but it kind of applies. It's a big company, it's a global company. He also said Americans need to get back in love with smaller cars instead of larger ones. A surprise. This is the story says this. A surprising statement given given the majority of Ford's profits come from trucks, considering America's car makers have historically had trouble making money on smaller cars. Specifically in America, they like big cars. We have to start, this is again quoting Farley, we have to start to get back in love with smaller vehicles. It's super important for our society and for EV adoption. We are just in love with these monster vehicles. I love them too, but it's a major issue with weight. Nothing he's saying there is actually wrong. He's actually completely right about it. It's just like, it's the industry trying to figure out things. It hasn't figured them out yet, and it's just sort of feeling its way. It goes in one direction, it comes back. It goes in the good thing about things like this, the good thing about the statements from an CEO from a major company like this, is that they are thinking about it, and they're not afraid to rethink and readapt and readjust and redirect as they think necessary, because they're still feeling their way, they're still in their way. It's no bad thing to say that I'm not quite sure about this, I need to think about it. Actually, we need to go in a different direction. Ford's EV unit lost $1.32 billion during the first quarter. $1 billion. $1.32 billion. I can't just brush over that. I've got to emphasize that. Ford's EV unit lost $1.32 billion during the first quarter of this year. That's just during a quarter on 10,000 vehicles wholesale. While the unit also includes EV-related business such as software, those losses equate to a loss of $132,000 per vehicle the unit sells, so for each vehicle. Wow. So that again gives a lie to all those people saying, oh, car companies are trying to make money from EVs. Farley said it's crucial for Ford to make profitable EVs in the next 5 years as Chinese automakers continue to expand globally. Yeah, no kidding. If we cannot make money on EVs, we have competitors who have the largest market in the world who already dominate globally. What did I say right at the beginning? That, you know, we already have sub 30k EVs coming from China, already setting up their supply chain around the world. And if we don't make profitable EVs in the next 5 years, what is the future? We will just shrink into North America. So this is Ford. I mean, don't forget, Ford is the original maker of the people's car. I know we refer to Volkswagen when we say that, but Ford are the people that said, let's make a car that everybody can buy, which is the Model T. Make it quick, make loads of them, make them down to a price, keep them basic, and let's get people mobile. So we owe Ford a lot, let's be honest, and it would be a terrible, terrible disaster and quite a shame to see a legacy car manufacturer like Ford fall victim to these radical changes that are happening in our industry. So it's really something to think about. The key thing about it is that thing about small cars And this is after we've seen an effort from, like I said earlier, the car industry to move away from smaller cars to bigger, more profitable vehicles. But the trouble, as we found, particularly with this transition to EV, and those people that are buying EVs, you've had the early adopters. They've already bought the cars. You got the secondary early adopters, which are kind of like buying the used cars and stuff like that. You got the third level of early adopters, which are like, okay, yes, I'm willing to make that change, but it has to make sense to me. It has to make financial and feasible sense to me. It has to fit into my lifestyle. I have to be able to use it, and it has to be reasonable money. I haven't got money to throw away. That's what I'm saying. Third tier level early adopters. So they are like being much more discerning, much more particular, much more fussy about it. When you get to that end of the market, you have to kind of go, okay, now we have to build cars that they want, rather than cars that we just created, which are cool and fun and funky, and the people are just going to come and buy them, i.e. Teslas, right? So now we have a problem, and now our manufacturers are having to rethink. They're like, well, actually, people live in cities. They want an EV. The EV is predominantly going to be used in the city. They want a smaller car, A, that they can afford, B, that they can park it, and C, because it just makes sense to their lifestyles. So now they're having to rethink. So again, it's extraordinary. I've said this in several videos, and you'll find them on my channel, how much the car industry is in flux. I've never seen it like this before, but you see the statements like that, and you just realize, wow, it's really, shall we say, interesting times that we are in right now. Anyway, let me know what you think of this latest move from Ford. Let me know what you think of what's happening in the industry, and stay tuned. Of course, I'll keep bringing you news and updates as soon as I get them regarding the moving and shaking that's going on in the car industry. Check this out, guys. It's my book. It's my first novel, and it's written for car fans like you. It's a fun political action thriller. It's full of cool cars and spectacular action. Get your copy now at Amazon.com. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.